Today, I will tell you a story, one that was never meant to be spoken aloud. It is said to come from a scroll hidden beneath centuries of dust, a record of truths too heavy for the living to carry. So listen carefully, for this is not myth, it is memory. And now, we begin. The ruins lay silent beneath a dead hill where no bird circled and no wind dared to linger. Stones blackened by forgotten fire jutted from the earth like broken ribs, the last remains of a sanctuary, whose name had long fled the tongues of men. When the diggers uncovered the chamber, they found no gold, no idols, only ash layered upon ash, as though something sacred had burned itself out rather than be taken. At the chamber's center lay a cracked reliquary, sealed with pitch the color of night. It took 3 days to soften the hardened resin, and when it finally gave way, a breath of ancient dust rose like a ghost returning home. Inside was a single scroll, brittle, half-charred, yet marked with symbols that shimmered faintly even in darkness, as though refusing to die. The scholars who lifted it trembled, for the script was unmistakable. It belonged to the first scribe, to Enoch. The fragment spoke not of earthly laws or genealogies, but of a path that tears the sky, a passage of living light that no mortal eyes were meant to behold. Its letters bent and shifted like flame, revealing words only when touched by breath, as though the scroll itself remembered being read by a prophet taken alive into heaven. But beneath those glowing lines lay warnings, sentences scratched in a different hand, carved with a desperation that pierced the centuries. They spoke of a vision too devastating for human hearts, of realms beyond creation, where even angels fear to turn their gaze. And at the bottom, barely visible beneath layers of soot, let no king read this, let no priest carry it, for what Enoch saw was not meant to return to the world of men. Outside, the wind finally rose, whispering through the broken stones as though something had awakened. The fragment shifted in tone, its surviving lines unfolding like a wound in the fabric of time. Enoch described the moment the earth loosened beneath him, not as falling, but as being unthreaded from the world he had always known. The air grew weightless, the horizon widened, and something ancient turned its gaze toward him. Then the beings appeared. They were not the gentle messengers later generations would carve into stone. These were creatures woven of light and shadow, their forms trembling between substance and absence, their presence bending the very air around them. They did not descend. Rather, the world around Enoch rose toward them, as though creation itself lifted him into their waiting hands. Their voices struck him like layered storms. Thunder merged with whisper, command merged with mourning, yet beneath the power in their speech, Enoch felt recognition, as if heaven had awaited this meeting since the dawn of his bloodline. They carried him upward through folds of reality, veils so thin they felt like breath, yet so vast they separated all that exists. With each ascent, he glimpsed the remnants of creation's earliest days, winds that remembered the divine command, waters that shimmered with the echo of the first separation, embers that had once formed the stars. Higher still, the realms grew brighter, more severe. Rivers of living fire coiled beneath crystalline bridges, their light singing without sound. Voices from unseen choirs rose and fell like tides, chanting hymns older than the dust beneath Eden. And every moment in that ascent pressed against Enoch's mortal form a holiness so fierce it bordered on pain. Yet something shielded him, a veil unseen, a mercy unnamed. Without it, he would have vanished like smoke before the dawn. At last, a brilliance unlike any other emerged before him, a horizon made not of land, but of judgment itself, the first gate, towering, silent, waiting for him to be weighed. The scroll's third fragment darkened, as though the ink itself feared the memory it carried. Enoch wrote of the gate rising before him, not built of stone or metal, but of something living, something older than the first sunrise. Its surface shimmered like molten gold, trapped inside a prism of frozen lightning, shifting with shapes that resembled wings one moment and eyes the next. 2 watchers stood beside it. They did not move. They did not breathe. Their gaze alone bent the air, as if memory itself had weight. Their faces were veiled in radiance so intense that even the angels of lower realms could not bear it. Enoch wrote that looking upon them felt like standing between 2 mirrors that reflected not his body, but the truth of his soul. Their silence was not absence, it was judgment. When he stepped forward, the gate awakened. It did not open, it remembered. Light spilled from its seams and unfurled into scenes that surrounded him like drifting smoke. Moments from his life, every choice, every quiet thought, every word spoken in anger or mercy, emerged around him in patterns of light. Some shone gently, others crackled like burning leaves. Then came the memories he had forgotten, the ones that hid in the folds of sleep, in the breath between heartbeats. Even those were summoned. Nothing in him remained concealed. Enoch felt his spirit tremble, not from guilt or fear, but from the terrible purity of the unveiling. This was no courtroom, no throne, no divine decree. The judgment was simple. A man is measured by the truth he carries within himself. Only when the gate finished its remembering did the watchers stir. Just once. A motion so slight the stars might have missed it. And the gate parted. A wind without direction swept through, neither warm nor cold, carrying the scent of something unearthly, a purity that cut deeper than any blade. Enoch stepped through, knowing that the threshold behind him had closed forever. Mortal life had ended, yet he still breathed. Before him stretched a city of impossible light, silent as a held breath. Beyond the gate, the light did not simply shine. It stood. It gathered in vast pillars, in drifting veils, in waves that rose and fell like living architecture. Enoch stepped onto streets that felt neither solid nor yielding, as though they were woven from the memory of purity rather than stone. The city was immense. Towers of white fire spiraled upward, their tips vanishing into a sky that did not know darkness or dawn. Bridges arched like strands of glass stretched thin by divine hands. And everywhere the air quivered with a quiet that was not emptiness. It was worship. Then he saw them. Hosts beyond counting moved through the radiant expanse. Angels, but not as men would later paint them. No wings, no halos, no robes of gold. They were forms of concentrated light, each one a figure shaped by purpose, their bodies shifting subtly like flames bending in a sacred wind. Yet none of them spoke. Their silence struck Enoch more deeply than the blinding brilliance. They moved with grace. They bowed before the unseen throne. They carried out tasks that shaped the order of heaven itself. But never once did a voice rise among them. Enoch wondered why. The answer came not in words, but in revelation. Here, language was power. Here, a single word could command creation. Here, silence was obedience. One angel passed close enough that Enoch felt a shiver of raw holiness sweep over him. Its presence hummed like a chord struck on the strings of the universe, vibrating through bone and spirit. Though it did not turn its face, Enoch sensed that it acknowledged him. A mortal who had crossed a threshold few would ever touch. He realized then that heaven was not the gentle radiance men imagined. It was discipline, order, a realm where even angels feared their own voices. As Enoch walked deeper into the shimmering city, he saw that every movement, every gesture, every flicker of light was part of a greater harmony, a silent hymn sung without sound. And far ahead, at the heart of that luminous expanse, a new chamber awaited him. Its entrance pulsed like a heartbeat. Inside lay the place angels seldom entered, the archive of souls. The chamber's threshold pulsed with a dim, trembling radiance, unlike the steady brilliance of the silent city. It felt alive, as though something within was breathing, waiting, remembering. When Enoch crossed into it, the air thickened and the light folded inward, drawing him into a vast expanse where time no longer knew how to move. There were no walls. Instead, rivers of light spiraled upward like translucent smoke, each stream carrying fragments that flickered with shape and color. Faces appeared and vanished. Voices whispered and dissolved. Whole lives rose and fell within those luminous currents, like sparks born from an unseen fire. Enoch understood at once. These were souls, not the souls themselves, but their memories. He watched a fragment drift near him, glowing faintly. Within it, he saw the life of a shepherd, his joys, his fears, the tenderness with which he once wrapped a newborn lamb in cloth. The memory shone gently, like a candle untouched by wind. Then another stream passed, this one darker. Within it flickered the trembling hands of a man who had betrayed his brother. Each motion crackled like scorched paper. Enoch felt the weight of it press against him, not condemnation from above, but the echo of the deed itself, heavy enough to bend the light around it. Here, judgment was no throne, no fire, no decree. It was reflection, a soul confronted by the truth it had crafted through its own days. The chamber reacted to each memory, brightening when mercy appeared, dimming when cruelty surfaced. Enoch sensed that nothing could be hidden here. Secrets clung to a soul like dust to skin, and this place stripped everything bare. Deeper in the chamber, the currents converged. They formed a great column of light that rose into the unseen heights, pulsing with the weight of creation. Every life ever lived, every whispered thought, every forgotten kindness, every silent wrongdoing, passed through it in a ceaseless upward tide. Enoch felt himself trembling, not from fear, but from the unbearable intimacy of it all. Humanity was revealed here not as nations or tribes, but as the quiet truth of each heart. A final revelation stirred in the fragment. Some memories sang, others screamed, and the column of light received them both, unflinching, unbroken, eternal. Ahead, another path unfurled, darker and stormlit, the throne. Hidden in storm awaited him. The pathway that opened before Enoch trembled with a violence unlike anything he had yet seen. The radiant calm of the archive faded behind him, swallowed by a rising wind that carried no direction, no season, no breath of earth. It was as if he had stepped into the heartbeat of a storm that had existed since before time was spoken into being. The sky above him fractured. Bolts of light, not lightning, but something older, something with memory, tore across the firmament in jagged veins. They illuminated a vast horizon where the very air seemed to churn with living power. Every flash showed glimpses of colossal shapes moving behind the storm, too enormous to comprehend, too holy to face directly. Enoch felt his soul bend beneath it. Here, even angels seldom walked. Here, glory did not soften itself for creation. Here, the divine did not hide. A figure approached him, not an angel of the silent city, but a guardian wrought from storm and fire. Its wings were not wings at all, but swirling spirals of wind that roared without sound. Its eyes carried the weight of untold judgments, and when it lifted its arm, the storm bent away from Enoch as if commanded by ancient law. The guardian did not speak, it merely pointed, and the clouds parted. At the center of that roaring void stood the throne, not shaped by hands, not forged by any tool, but formed of coiled lightning, roaring thunder, and light so intense it tore at Enoch's mortal essence. It was not an object. It was presence, a force, a truth. He glimpsed it only for the span of a heartbeat. Even shielded, even protected, the sight nearly unmade him. His breath vanished. His bones felt hollow. His spirit shuddered under the weight of a holiness that could erase mountains with a whisper. The fragment described it in a single trembling line. I saw the place where even the mighty place their fear. Around the throne, hosts of unseen beings moved like shadows within lightning, their shapes indistinguishable amid the brilliance. Their silence was different from the city's. It was reverence mixed with terror, the stillness of those who stand close enough to feel the breath of eternity. A single flash, brighter than the rest, struck the storm, and in that instant Enoch understood. He had been brought here not to witness power, but to witness the boundary of creation itself. Behind the storm's veil, something awaited him, not wrath, not glory, truth. Below the storm's roaring horizon, the scroll's ink deepened into a shade that almost seemed to bleed. Enoch wrote that the guardian led him downward, not falling, not descending, but passing through a rupture in the storm where the light bent like a torn veil. The brilliance above gave way to a dim, trembling glow that felt older than the heavens he had just crossed. Then he heard it, a sound that was not sound, a vibration that moved through spirit rather than ear. It was music shaped from sorrow, rhythm forged from chains, harmony born from the memory of rebellion. The chamber he entered was vast, stretching beyond sight, its walls shaped from the underside of creation itself. Here lay what heaven did not speak of, a choir bound in radiance and shadow, their forms twisted by ages of judgment. They were not monstrous, they were not grotesque. They were tragic, angels who had fallen before the earth took form, imprisoned in this hidden depth where their voices sustained the balance of all things. Their song kept the fabric of existence from tearing. Their chains kept the universe from forgetting justice. Enoch felt their lament tremble through him. Every note carried history. Every harmony carried regret older than Eden. He realized this was no punishment. It was purpose. Terrible, eternal purpose. Some of the bound angels lifted their faces toward him. Their eyes were dim stars, faint remnants of the glory they once bore. The chains wrapped around them glowed with inscriptions Enoch could not read, symbols etched by the very hand of the Most High, binding them not in cruelty, but in necessity. One of them reached outward, not to escape, not to plead, but to warn. In its touch, though no touch occurred, Enoch felt a truth he had no words for. Creation stands upon foundations built by both obedience and rebellion. Light does not exist without shadow, and the universe survives because both sing. The choir's lament rose to a peak, trembling the very chamber, and, for the first time, Enoch sensed fear not from them, but for them. Something above was stirring, something that would soon reach this depth. The fragment ended with a single line. The song cannot hold forever. Ahead, a figure of pure radiance awaited him, an angel who would break the silence of heaven itself. The pathway that carried Enoch out of the under-heaven rose like a column of trembling light, shaking with the echoes of the choir's lament. As he ascended, the storm above dimmed, as though creation itself held its breath. The realms he had passed through, the archive, the silent city, the gate of memory, seemed suddenly distant, as if he were moving into a place none of them dared approach. Then he saw him. A single angel stood at the threshold where the storm gave way to stillness. His radiance was unlike the others, not layered, not shifting, but steady, burning with a calm that seemed carved from eternity. He did not bear the disciplined stillness of the silent city, nor the terrifying intensity of the storm guardians. He was something else, a witness, a keeper of truths too sharp for the heavenly order, and unlike the countless hosts Enoch had seen. This one turned toward him. His face shone like a star pressed into human shape, yet beneath the glory there was something startlingly sorrowful, a weight that even angelic light could not hide. Enoch felt the chamber tighten around him, as if the very laws of heaven braced themselves for what would follow. For this was an angel who remembered words, and words in heaven were no small thing. He approached Enoch with steps that made no sound, his movements fluid like drifting fire. And when he stopped before him, the realms themselves seemed to lean closer. Enoch expected silence, but the angel spoke, a single word. The scroll never recorded it. The letters burned through the parchment, leaving only a scar where the revelation had once lived. But the fragment described the aftermath. The corridors of heaven trembled, the chains of the lower choir tightened with a cry, and the storm recoiled like a wounded beast. That one word entered Enoch's spirit like a blade made of light and memory. It was truth. It was warning. It was prophecy. And it tore open a vision within him, not of the past, not of the present, but of a future humanity could not endure unprepared. When the trembling ceased, the angel's radiance dimmed, as though the act of speaking had cost him a measure of his eternal strength. He reached out, placing his hand near Enoch's heart, not touching, yet leaving a warmth that felt like fire wrapped in mercy, and he whispered without sound, "You must remember this." For a moment, the silence around them felt heavier than the storm. Then the angel stepped aside, allowing Enoch to continue forward, and ahead, beyond a veil of dimmed brilliance, the vision that would haunt the ages awaited him. The veil ahead did not part. It dissolved, as though reality itself thinned to make way for the revelation Enoch was about to bear. The air grew denser, heavy, with a solemn stillness that felt older than the angels, older than creation's first breath. Enoch stepped forward, and the light around him dimmed into a deep, trembling gold. Then the vision struck him, not gently, not as an unfolding scroll, but as a flood. The heavens darkened, not with night, but with the terrible dimming of a realm withdrawing its radiance. Stars flickered like dying embers. The silent towers of the celestial city bowed, their white fire flickering as though caught in an unseen wind. The chained choir beneath creation cried out, not in rebellion, but in warning, their harmonies twisting into a sorrow that vibrated through the bones of existence. Above it all, a breach opened in the sky, a tear of pure brilliance, the same light that had once lifted Enoch from the earth, the same light that had guarded the throne deep within the storm. But now it descended, not as mercy, not as invitation, as judgment. Enoch saw humanity beneath this unfolding sky, cities trembling, mountains folding, oceans rising as if answering to a forgotten command. Men and women looked upward, shielding their eyes as the world around them shuddered under an approaching truth it had never been meant to forget. The light grew sharper, concentrated, like an ancient blade forged from the dawn of time. And within it he saw something vast and terrible, the return of the gate that had judged him, not for one man, for all. The earth split open with the weight of it. Souls poured forth, luminous, dark, trembling, each one drawn into the light's reflection, forced to witness themselves, as Enoch once had. No throne appeared, no angel declared wrath. Judgment came from remembrance alone. And still the light descended. Nations crumbled not from fire, but from truth. Everything hidden, exposed, everything whispered, echoed, everything forgotten, resurrected. Enoch fell to his knees in the vision, overwhelmed not by fear, but by the unbearable sorrow of what humanity would face. A reckoning not of destruction, but of unveiling. And then he understood. The one word the angels spoke was not about heaven. It was about the world he had left behind. A final pulse of brilliance swallowed the vision. When it cleared, Enoch stood trembling, tears of light falling from his eyes. Before him shimmered the last path, a narrow road leading back toward the realms he had crossed. It was time for him to return. The vision faded like smoke drawn into a vast and silent breath. Enoch stood alone in a realm where no wind moved, no echo lingered, no angelic host dared approach. The storm, the choir, the city of fire, all seemed impossibly distant now, as though they had folded back into the eternity from which they were formed. Only one presence remained. It did not appear. It did not descend. It simply was, filling every atom of the air with a holiness too vast for words, too immense for form. Enoch felt it before he sensed it before he understood it. His spirit bowed within him, not from command, but from recognition. The Most High did not speak with thunder, nor with flame, nor with the storm that guarded his throne. The command came like a breath pressed gently against the core of Enoch's being, a truth written directly into the marrow of his soul. You must go back. You must carry what you have seen. You must seal it until the appointed time. Enoch's knees weakened. He had crossed creation. He had withstood gates of judgment, cities of silent angels, choirs of bound rebellion, storms that concealed the throne itself. But this command felt heavier than all of it. To return was to carry a burden that humanity was never meant to bear. To speak was forbidden. To remain silent was unbearable. Light encircled him, not as radiance, but as memory, fragments of everything he had witnessed, pressed together into a single, unbearable truth. He felt the word the angel had spoken burn once more in his spirit, shaping itself into a message, a warning, a prophecy curled like fire beneath his ribs. The realms began to withdraw. The pillars of heaven folded into streaks of brilliance. The gates sealed themselves with thunderless finality. The archive dimmed into distant glow. The choir's lament echoed once, then fell silent. Enoch felt himself falling, not violently, not with fear, but with the strange calm of one who knows he carries something greater than breath. The earth rushed toward him, its forests, its dust, its mortal weight. He returned with no scorch of light, no roar of heaven, only a trembling stillness that settled around him as his feet touched the soil once more. Men searched for him. Some found only whispers. Others found only fear. Enoch wrote what he could. He sealed what he must. The rest, the greatest truths, he scattered across hidden places buried beneath stone, dust, and centuries. Only fragments survived, fragments like the scroll found beneath the ashes. And so the story ends with the final line burned into the surviving margin of that ancient fragment. I was shown what must come, and I was commanded to return, not for myself, but for the ones who will see the light descend again.